this is my favorite part of Revelation. I really enjoy chapter 7 a lot. I don't care for chapter 6's, the seals and the tragedy opening, but I do enjoy the throne room of heaven scene in chapter 7, which is very similar to chapter 6. And I think what we're going to see is there are some parallels between chapter 7 and chapters 4 and 5 that we saw last week, that inspired such wonderful conversation between Cindy and I. We're going to get, I think, a little more of that kind of idea this week. So we'll look at that as we jump into it. So Revelation chapter 6 offers the beginning of a series of calamities. We get a collection of calamities. We have three different sevenfold series that depict calamities. We have seven seals, we have seven trumpets, there are seven bowls. There is a fourth that's mentioned, the thunders that are about to happen, and the angel tells John not to write about those. So, so we have seals, trumpets, bowls, and then the thunders. No, don't take that part down. Like, all right, I won't talk about the thunders then. So we don't know about the thunders, but we do know about the seals, the trumpets, and the bowls. The question that we need to answer is: are these different events? In other words, are there seven seals, and then there's seven trumpets, and then there's seven bowls? Or are they the same events that might be depicted in different ways? Is there and I've used the term a lyrical quality to this. Is there are these verses that are riffing off the same theme? You have to be careful with apocalyptic visions, thinking too chronologically, because I think we're going to see in chapter 7 that chapter 7 takes place pretty much at the end of the story. I mean, we get the resolution, but it's chapter 7, right? We're not in chapter 22. And so things are talked about out of time sometimes. And so I think it's helpful to think more musically when we think about Revelation. So don't try to move through and then this happened and then this happened and this happened. It's kind of like trying to describe a dream chronologically. You can't really describe a dream chronologically. You have to.
And then this happened.
And then this happened, and then this happened. But wait, but I mentioned he had a rabbit. I mean, it's that kind of thing that's going on there. So be careful to not try to be too like say chronological. Remember the genre that we're dealing with here. These kind of calamities are pretty common. The characteristics are common characteristics of the eschaton, or of the end of time. We see this in apocalyptic texts, and we see this in other texts. Other Texases. I just know of the one Texas. I just know the one Texas. Other texts that have apocalyptic episodes in them. The Gospels all have little apocalypses in them, and they are all they have a little bit of eschatology going on in there, and there are eschatological woes, these dangers, these calamities that are coming. Now, although all of these apocalyptic texts share this quality to them, they all vary in who the woes affect. Some of the apocalyptic texts say that the calamities affect everybody. Some say that a small, faithful group is protected from the calamities that are going on, and that just the wicked are, fall victim to these apocalyptic tragedies. We're going to see that Revelation has its own spin on this, but I did want to look at. I've said several times that the more I have studied, the more I've discovered, and frankly, later in my life than I would have liked this to happen, that the book of Revelation is a New Testament book. The book of Revelation fits the story that we know from the Gospels. It tells the story that we know from the Gospels in a dramatic fashion, in a genre that we're unfamiliar with, but it is still the same story that we know from the Gospels. And I wanted to show how that happens, particularly with regard to the Gospel texts, apocalyptic sections that I just mentioned. There are these eschatological sections in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. John doesn't have any because in John, remember, John is a realized eschatology. Everything that happens at the end of time is available right now. Full presence with God, resurrection. I am the resurrection. So John has a different eschatology. But the synoptics all have a futuristic eschatology. And in these chapters, chapter 24 in Matthew and 13 in Luke, there are these events that are described. First, wars international strife, famines, earthquakes, persecutions, eclipses of the sun, the moon, falling of the stars from heaven, and the shaking of the powers of heaven. All of that is a sign of the end of the world that happens in Matthew. Okay? Mark looks exactly the same, which shouldn't surprise us since 90% of Mark is found in Matthew. But the same order, even wars, international strife, famines, earthquakes, persecutions, eclipses of the sun and moon, falling of the stars, shaking of the powers of heaven. And I've got the references here: Matthew 24, 6, 7, 9, and 29, Mark 13, 7 to 9, and 24 to 25 to show that. Luke, little bit different, not real different. Luke 21 has wars, international strife, famines, earthquake, persecutions, then signs of the sun, moon, and stars, people fainting from the fear of things coming on the world, and the shaking of the powers of heaven. So all that happens. Now, with that in line, look at the way these are. Now, these are numbered as the seals that are opened, which we'll talk about in a second. After the first seal, you get war. The second is international strife, then famine, then pestilence, death in Hades, persecutions, and then the sixth seal, earthquakes, eclipses of the sun, the moon becoming like blood, or the ensanguining of the moon, which is a great word. I just wanted to be able to say ensanguining. Yeah, not a great word? You feel better? I do. It's a good word to know. E-N sanguine. Ensanguining. Anyway, of the moon, the falling of the stars, and then men in this case, kings, rulers, powers, calling on the rocks and the mountains to fall on them, and the shakings of the power of heaven and the four destroying winds. So obviously there's a little bit of unpacking in the sixth seal, but the order of the destruction's pretty similar. It's fascinating how the gospel apocalypses and the Revelation apocalypse have the same eschatological order. So, I mean, the assumption, and this is seen in other apocalyptic books as well, this seems to be a genre, one of the tropes of apocalypses, is that you have these things. You have to, it's kind of like starting a fairy tale once upon a time. You got to do that, right? You're wanting to tell the story of the romantic comedy. You got to have the people have the misunderstanding that breaks them up for a little while before they find right before the third act. Exactly. So I mean, there's those certain genres, tropes that you always buy into. The hero's journey, right? You've got to have the wise teacher. You've got to have so it's possible that this is just a quality of Jewish apocalyptic that everyone's aware of, that you have wars, international strife, famines, pestilence, persecutions, earthquakes, that all that works. Yeah. Oh, here's earthquakes and here's pestilence. Well, the earthquakes get moved to the sixth seal in Revelation. And we don't have pestilence here in the Gospels. I don't think we have famines, but not pestilence isn't listed. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure why. I think that the major cosmological effects are all the sixth seal, and of which earthquakes would be. Ground's not supposed to. If you've ever been through an earthquake, ground's not supposed to shake. It's like the most disorienting thing ever. This is not supposed to move, and so I think that might be it, right? The sixth seal. You're grouping all of the sun turning dark, the moon becoming ensanguined, the stars falling from the sky, the earth shaking, all of that fits together, maybe in the same seal. I don't know. That's just my guess. It's a good question. So Revelation chapter 6, verse 1, then I saw the Lamb open one of the seven seals. Now, first, this is a weird thing, because if you have a scroll and it's got seven seals along its edge, imagine this bottle is a scroll. It's got seven seals as it goes. It's really well sealed. That's a good thing. But as you remove a seal, you still can't see what's inside. And so this has caused some interpretive challenges in this. And pretty much, I think at the end of the day, we're just going to have to relax on this one. Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of those times when we can't be overly literal with how this sealing thing works. Some have suggested that you don't know what's on the seal, that these things aren't part of the seals. They're anticipating the seals. I think these things are leaking out as the seals are broken. Okay, that as the first seal is broken, something happens. The second seal, something happens, until it's all the way open and we see what the big climax is. So in many ways, this is fitting your typical apocalyptic as it goes. Okay, I saw the Lamb open one of the seven seals. So just moving his finger along the scroll. And I heard one of the living creatures call out as with a voice of thunder, "Come!" And I looked, And there was a white horse. Its rider had a bow. A crown was given to him, and he came out conquering and to conquer. So war is coming. The rider with the bow, some believe, could be a direct invoking of Parthians, who were, of course, the arch nemesis of the Romans, and they are known for being archers on horseback. And so to call a horse with a bow and name that specifically, that would be, and we're shooting at Rome here. We're attacking Rome. As you see, we're about to attack Rome again. When he opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature say, "Come," and out came another horse. It's bright red. So we have a white horse, red horse. Its rider was permitted to take peace from the earth. So we get international strife, or possibly internal strife. I don't know. I mean, I think what we're getting here is, again, a direct attack on Rome, right? I mean, what is Rome more famous for than the Pax Romana? So we have the Parthians from the outside and the peace of Rome from the inside now being destabilized, I think. But it's causing strife, so that people would slaughter one another, and he was given a great sword. So the second horse is now on the way. When he opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature call out, "Come," and I looked, and there was a black horse. Its rider had a pair of scales in his hand, and I heard what seemed to be a voice in the midst of four living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a day's pay, and 3 quarts of barley for a day's pay, but do not damage the olive oil and the wine." So it means that you can either buy enough bread for the one guy who's working, cheap bread for the whole family for an entire day's pay. So in other words, you can't feed your whole family on the good bread. You're going to have to get the bad bread to feed your family. And starvation is on. Basically, rampant inflation and starvation has happened, is what this means. And then we get the fourth seal. These are kind of approached as a group. So when he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature call out, "Come," and I looked, and there was a pale green horse, or greenish yellow is sort of the color here. It's actually the Greek word is the one that gives us the root for the word chlorine. So imagine a color of chlorine, that sort of, look at the color of death is what it is. The yellow green of death is what we're looking at here. This is death, is what we're looking at. The rider's name was Death, and Hades followed with him. They were given authority over a fourth of the earth to kill with the sword, famine, pestilence, and wild animals of the earth. All 4 of these things associated with military battle. Sword, famine, pestilence, and wild animals are what happens to battlefields and happens to countries in fighting at this point. So death, yeah, and the abode, death and the abode of the dead. So death and Hades, both death and what comes next. So this is typical of apocalyptic. Things are about to get bad. So I mean, the bad that it is are the first drops of rain of a deluge that's coming for John the Revelator. Things, you can see it on the horizon here. All right, so the seals, the first 4 seals have been opened. By the way, the horse colors are coming from Zechariah. And what's interesting is that in Zechariah, those horses are positive, actually. These riders and the horses are going out to conquer and be victorious. Here they're going out and bringing death and pestilence and famine and bad stuff. So I was thinking it's an interesting appropriation that John is using with the colors here. So when he opened the 5th seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slaughtered for the word of God and for the testimony they had given. So under the altar of God are the souls who had been slaughtered. And probably some help in understanding here is in the Old Testament, the blood of an animal was poured on the altar. And blood was always part of a sacrifice because an animal's life, nephesh, what we would think of as soul, though that word doesn't exactly work for the Old Testament because we are living souls. But the soul was in the life of an animal was in the blood. So when it says the soul was under the altar, the blood has run under the altar. That nothing is escaping the notice of God in apocalyptic. And God is the one and that is part of the that's part of the message of hope in apocalyptic, is that the chaos and the lack of order in the world seems as though the world is coming apart at the seams. But apocalyptic peels back the veil and lets you see that this is part of the plan. This is what's going to happen. This is the way it goes. This is how the end is going to go. This is always how the end goes, right? But it gets undermined here in a minute, which is really kind of cool. The way I want to say undermined, it sort of gets undermined in a minute. So under the altar are the souls who've been slaughtered. So these are the martyrs. These is like Antipas at the beginning of the book, who has suffered and died for testimony of the word of God. So their life has been poured onto the altar. They cried out with a loud voice, "Sovereign Lord, holy and true, how long?" So we get this classic lament, right? How long will it be before you judge and avenge our blood on the inhabitants of the earth? Rarely that you get talk of vengeance in Revelation, but it is a sense of justice they're looking for here, right? Our lives have been taken. How long until the scales are balanced? How long until the world is brought into order again, right? They were each given a white robe. Hold on to that, right? They were each given a white robe. Remember, white robe, victorious. So these martyrs have overcome. These under the altar have overcome, and told to rest a little longer until the number would be complete, both of their fellow servants and of their brothers and sisters who were soon to be killed as they themselves had been killed. So it's not time yet. The end has not yet come. There is going to be more. It's going to get worse. But God is not forgotten. God is not, he's not out of it. The plan is not failing. We're just not at that point of the story yet. We're just to the fifth seal. When he opened the sixth seal, I looked, and there came a great earthquake. The sun became black as sackcloth. The full moon became like blood, or ensanguined. The stars of the sky fell to the earth as the fig tree drops its winter fruit when shaken by a gale. The sky vanished like a scroll rolling itself up. Every mountain and island was removed from its place. Then the kings of the earth, those kings of the earth, by the way, likely responsible for the martyrs in the previous seal, for probably the ones who took their lives, and the magnates and the generals and the rich and the powerful and everyone, slave and free, hid in the caves among the rocks of the mountains, calling to the mountains and the rocks, "Fall on us, hide us from the face of the one seated on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of their wrath has come, and who is able to stand?" Unusual, you get the term wrath in the New Testament. Then normally you think of that as an Old Testament idea. I do think it's interesting that it's not any of the elders or the martyrs who are using that term. It is the people who made them martyrs who are the ones who are viewing this as wrath and judgment in this, which I find that significant. But they ask a very important question: who is able to stand? Thankfully, we get an answer to that question in the interlude. This happens in we get the three seals, the three trumpets, the three bowls. It happens all three times that you get six together. Then there's an interlude. Then you do the seventh. That happens every time. So we have six seals. And now we interrupt our seal opening for a brief interlude, possibly to answer this question: who is able to stand? So after this, I saw four angels standing at the four corners of the earth, holding back the four winds of the earth, so that no wind could blow on the earth or sea or against any tree. So destruction is being held back. So they're seeing it as everything, and God is holding back destruction at this point. So I just think that's an interesting. Could be worse. That's the message. I saw another angel ascending from the rising of the sun, having the seal of the living God, probably a ring, like the seal signet ring, that it would have been pressed into the seals to make the scrolls. So that is exactly the same word in English. It's exactly the same word in Greek as well, that there's a seal that is, so there's obviously a play on this here. So the angel's holding the seal of the living God, and he called with a loud voice to the four angels who'd been given power to damage the earth and sea, saying, "Do not damage the earth or the sea or the trees." We're going to call out the trees on that one too. Like the earth or the sea or the trees. The land is fine. Anything else is fine. It's funny. The judgment that comes in Jeremiah 7 at the end of his temple sermon, when God is so angry at Israel, and God says, "I'm going to bring judgment upon you." and the tree. He brings specifically names the trees that judgment is going to come on. The people and the land and the trees. It's like he's so mad. And they're going to be protected until we have marked the servants of God with our seal upon their foreheads. So now they're going to be sealed as well, and protected. So good to know, like most apocalyptic, I'm sure, small number are going to be saved from this, right? That's always the way apocalyptic goes. There's the faithful, who are those isolated ones that God has protected, the small group that really gets it. And then everyone else, they get burned up and get sent to hell, basically. That's what always happens. We faithful, the ones who really get it. We've known those denominations. You know those denominations, right? But we're the only ones who know. So I wonder how many there are. Well, let's find out. Yes, don't spoil the ending. And I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 sealed out of every tribe of the people of Israel. From the tribe of Judah, 12,000. From the tribe of Reuben, 12,000. From the tribe of Gad, 12,000. From the tribe of Asher, 12,000. From the tribe of Naphtali, 12,000. The tribe of, if we've got 12,000 and it's 144,000, can you guess how many tribes there are? From the tribe of Manasseh, 12,000, the tribe of Simeon, 12,000, tribe of Levi, 12,000, tribe of Issachar, 12,000, tribe of Zebulun, 12,000, tribe of Joseph, 12,000, tribe of Benjamin, 12,000. Well, Benjamin's the youngest, so that's obviously why he's there. Joseph was the second to youngest, so that makes some sense too. Manasseh was Joseph's son, so that's complicated. Also, Reuben was the oldest, and he usually comes first in all the tribe lists, but not in Revelation. Judah comes first in Revelation. I'm assuming because the lion of the tribe of Judah is the lamb, maybe. I don't know. Remember in our Old Testament conversation, we have to be careful about don't get caught up about the 12 tribes, all right? It's 12, even when it's not, all right? It's 12. Yeah. We've got a couple of curious things. There were 12 sons of Jacob and Leah and Rachel and the handmaids. Yes. Those 12 sons go on to be the patriarchs of tribes, except Joseph had two sons who each got tribes of their own, Ephraim and Manasseh. Okay? And then there's Levi, who was a son of Jacob, but he didn't get a land inheritance. So there are 14 names for 12 tribes, one of who didn't have an inheritance of land in there, and they're listed in here. So what I'm telling you is math isn't math always. This is symbolic math. It's 12 tribes, okay? Gad is not mentioned. Ephraim is not mentioned. Why? I don't know. They're just not. Joseph is mentioned, but then so is his son Manasseh. I don't know what's going on here. But here's the part that I think is really cool. And this, maybe you'll think this is cool this time. I didn't get you last week at the beginning, but maybe I can get you this time. 144,000, I'm going to need to get some factors of that. 12 times 12,000. Okay, so, and 12,000 is 12 times 1,000. And 1,000 is 10 times 10 times 10. So remember our symbolic numbers. But 144,000, 12 times 12 times 10 times 10 times 10. Okay? Trust me on that, it is. Okay? 12 being a symbolic number for Israel, being symbolic number which was represented by the disciples. 12 times 12, that's a big number. That's the entire church, or the entire people of Israel, if you will, times 1,000. 10, remember, 10s give us orders of magnitude. 10 times 10 times 10. This might as well say infinity, really. I mean, I know it's 144,000, but you can't get overly literal with this number. It is like 70 times 7, right? So I can send 490 times. Got it. No, that's not the point of this story. 144,000 that's a big number. And here's how you know it's a big number. And this is really cool. Oh, here's another question. Why do you take a census in ancient history? Do you know why you take a census in ancient history? Taxes, exactly, and military. So a count like this reminds us of the men of fighting age in the book of Numbers. It reminds us of David's census in 2 Samuel 24, right? So this is at the same time calling to mind, it's sort of a military image, which wouldn't surprise us. In apocalyptic, you get that, right? You get armies of the Lord, which go out and fight. That's very, very common, right? But here's the part that I think is really pretty cool on this. This is, you can get excited. You can tell by my stance I'm getting excited. Look at verse 4. And I heard, right? And I heard. Do you remember what happened back in chapter 4? Or chapter 5, I should say, when I said, who's going to open the seal? Who's been worthy? And I heard the Lion of the tribe of Judah. And then I looked. So I heard 144,000. And then after this, I looked, and there was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, from all tribes and peoples and languages, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, robed in white, with palm branches in their hands. They cried out in a loud voice, saying, salvation belongs to our God who is seated on the throne and to the Lamb. So the 144,000 is, we're pulling a little sneaky on you. Yeah. They're using language that you would associate with the angel armies of God, or the hosts of heaven that are going to come fight. And I heard that. I heard the roll call, and okay, sounds like pretty good military. And I look, and I see martyrs, and not a small number of people who are being sealed. A great multitude of people who are being sealed. This is a subversion of apocalyptic. Again, like we've seen before, instead of the great army of God that is being equipped on the sly, Star Destroyers off in the undiscovered lands that are ready to come in. We don't talk about that. Instead of that, which is what you would normally expect, we get a reversal of that. And instead of a military, we get martyrs, more than anyone could ever count. So it's not a small group that's being sealed or saved in Revelation. It is a huge number that in more than every race, all the peoples, all the languages. Now, some interpreters of Revelation would say that the 144,000 are Jewish Christians and the great multitude are Gentile Christians, because obviously we have Jewish connection and Gentile connection. And I have said, probably from the pulpit, that most every book in the New Testament deals with the issue of Jewish Christian, Gentile Christian. And it is true that many of the books do. But Revelation doesn't. That has not been the way it's talked about it up to now. It is written late enough that problem is probably starting. We're seeing the Gentilization of the church to the point that you don't have a strong Jewish character anymore, at least not the way you did, say, when Paul is writing Galatians or Romans, when that issue is at the forefront. So, and I think that when you look at 4 and 5, I heard the lion, and I saw the lamb, and then I heard the number, this military, and I saw there was this multitude. I think it's the same number, because great multitude no one can count, and 144,000 is exactly the same number. I mean, 144,000 and infinity, symbolically, that's a lot of people. Is symbolically speaking, are the same number. Yeah, martyr means testimony in Greek. In the book of Revelation, martyrs are those who died for the faith. Period. They died for the word of God. They have washed their robes in the blood of the Lamb, their own blood poured on the altar. Their soul, that was the image of them being under the altar. Their blood has been poured out. And they're looking for that. Now, it's possible that some have also argued the 144,000 are martyrs, and these are not the martyrs. I think it's the same number, just by the way that this talks about it. I think it's the same number. The people who received this letter would know that the author John knows persecution's about to come. It is about to happen. You are going to be called upon to make a decision. Do you testify to God, martyr yourself, or do you give in to the emperor cult and give in to Rome, knowing that they're also ran here and when the seals are opened? Yeah, they're hearing that the raindrops of persecution is foreshadowing the storm that's coming. That's what they're hearing. And those who are faithful. And those that are faithful will get a white robe and overcome. Those who overcome. Yes. It is a call to, stop me if you've heard this, take up your cross and follow Christ. That's all this is. It is exactly the same language. Or lay down your life for your friends. I mean, every gospel tells the same story, right? If you're going to come after me, you must deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow. That's this. This is much more picturesque, but it is the same exact message. That discipleship is self-emptying martyrdom, right? The ones who aren't martyrs, are they part of the great multitude? That I will say that at this point, that's not who John is talking to. I'm not going to say they're not part of the multitude, but it may be a bigger, that's not who this is talking about right now. Yeah. We're not necessarily going on, that's the other thing. Remember that these books have occasions.
Right. I was just going to say.
And we are writing this to a group of people who are about to face a challenge of persecution. And, not every book in the Bible is for all of us all the time. But I do believe that there is a call to sacrifice that we could hear a lot better, because our tendency to syncretize as opposed to be countercultural prophets and hold on to our first love is real. I mean, I think and now I can't remember which church it is, that the wealthy church, I think it may have been Laodicea, that wants to be independent and doesn't want to trust in anybody for anything. That is the American dream, right? Self-made person pulling themselves up by their own bootstraps. And that is what is criticized by John here, is a lack of vulnerability to God, and a lack of vulnerability, I think, to one another as well. So yeah. So on the one hand, I don't want to cheapen the message of this book by saying, well, it's a spiritual sacrifice, But on the other hand, I don't want to pretend it doesn't apply either. I mean, I think we could listen well to the kind of commitment they were called to and realize that we are called to a level of commitment like that looks different in our time. You got to admit that it looks pretty stupid. Offer a sacrifice to a God that you don't believe in and live, or stand firm and be killed. There's a whole lot of pragmatic Christians that go, it doesn't matter. The emperor, just do it and get on with your life. Do it. God can't do anything with you if you're dead. I mean, you can hear it, right? And so the desire to compromise, and Revelation saying no. And see, I think that is the kind of challenge that the Gospel of Mark is written to deal with, because in Rome at the time, there was that local persecution of Nero, and some were willing to go along with it, and some were willing to stand firm and lost family members as a result of it. And now they're back in the same church. I mean, I can't imagine, right, trying to deal with that kind of an issue. So deliverance belongs to our God who is seated on the throne and to the Lamb. And all the angels stood around the throne and around the elders. By the way, who can possibly stand was the question that was asked by all the people on the earth when the world is falling apart. All these people are standing. The ones who died, the ones who are martyred, are standing before the throne. I don't think that language is accidental either, right? When there's no one that could possibly endure this. No, the martyrs have overcome. The martyrs overcame. Right? Once again, they conquered by dying. It's bad news. All the angels stood around the throne and around the elders and the four living creatures, and they fell on their faces before the throne and worshiped God, singing, Amen, blessing and glory and wisdom and thanksgiving and honor and power and might be to our God forever and ever. Amen. Mike sent me a text today suggesting the angels are simply God's hype men and are throughout the book of Revelation. So maybe so. So nice inclusio there. Amen. Amen. So our interlude has happened. So we've had our 6 seals. Who can possibly stand? These dudes can stand. And now it's time to open the 7th seal. Got to be dramatic, right? I mean, it just kept ramping up each seal. It got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Now it's time for the 7th seal. What could possibly top that? Then one of the elders addressed me saying, who are these robed in white, and where have they come from? And I said, sir, you're the one who knows. Which is always a good answer, by the way. If an angel asks you a question, Ezekiel tried this one too. You're the one who knows. Like, son of man, can these bones live? I bet you know, God. Yes, I do, right? It doesn't make God angry either when you do that. So that's a good way to go. You're the one who knows. He said to me, these are they who have come out of the great ordeal, the great trial, the great tribulation, and have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. So again, They have followed in the footsteps of Jesus, and they are worthy. For this reason, they are before the throne of God and worship him day and night within his temple, and the one who is seated on the throne will shelter them. They will hunger no more and thirst no more. The sun will not strike them, nor any scorching heat. For the Lamb at the center of the throne will be their shepherd. Finally, the translation recognizes the Lamb is sitting on the throne. Takes him a while. And he will guide them to the springs of the water of life, and God will wipe away every tear from the eyes. So all of this provision you would expect from your government, from the Romans, right? Food and shelter and protection, that's a myth. God is the one who is guiding them and protecting them and from the scorching heat and the hunger and all of that. So now that this is promised, when the Lamb opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about a half an hour. That's the big dramatic finish. Half an hour. I have always loved this verse for some reason. I think I would have been fine if it would have said, and there was silence in heaven, period. But the whole about a half an hour thing to me,
20 minutes.
Hard to say. Could have gone as long as 35. I don't know. I mean, I just have this image of John standing there going, you know. So, but about a half an hour there is silence. What is the deal with the silence coming up in this?
Why a half hour?
This happens a lot in our seals. Well, it's a measurable amount of time, a significant amount of time. It's not just people stopped for a second, right? I mean, this is a dramatic event. There is rest, if you will, on the seventh. It is a dramatic pause, and it is there are interpreters that see there are Jewish texts, and now I'm trying to remember. I believe it's Second Esdras that talks about creation having silence before it. That silence happened before creation, and that this is sort of we've seen an uncreation happening through the seals as it's gotten worse and worse. And it is the seventh seal that this happens, and so there is rest that occurs here on the seventh. And we're about to see that, by the way, not tonight, but in the future, when these other two series take place, the same kind of thing happens. There's not silence for half an hour, but you don't get the seventh thing is not dramatic. The seventh thing is never dramatic. The seventh thing is it almost just passes without even notice. But we come to the end of the seals. The scroll is completely open now, and you can unroll the scroll, and silence is when the scroll is finally opened. I also think it's interesting that you get this flash forward. I mean, I could ask, what's left to do? Right? The earth has passed away. The saints are before the throne. What's left to resolve? Go ahead. I mean, we're kind of done, you know? We could finish the story here, and we're pretty much done, right? I mean, we gotten folks to heaven and the great multitude's there, but we got another 14 chapters to go. So there's more to say. And again, subverting apocalyptic, right? The great army is going to go marching forth. No, a multitude larger than that we're not counting, because it's not an army, is actually giving their lives for the sake of Christ. And that's how they're overcoming and standing in this apocalypse. That's just cool.